Kesubos Daf Ayin test contains 3 Mishnayos. From the beginning of the Daf to the first Mishnah, the Gemara introduces a story on the topic of a woman who's trying to keep her possessions away from her husband, her future husband. Where we'll bring the story, some discussion about what the psak was, and then 3 questions on the pasuk in the story. So the Gemara brings the story. The story is as follows: the last 3 lines in Daf Ayin Ches was a lady who was in Almana. She was a widow and she was getting remarried, and she was afraid it wasn't going to work out, and she had a lot of property. She wanted to make sure that if she did marry, if the man that she did marry, she would then get divorced from, that she would not lose her property to him. She didn't want it to become his. So therefore, she wanted to keep it away from him. So she decided to give it as a gift to her daughter. However, she was concerned that if the marriage didn't work out, then she would lose the property to the daughter. So she wanted to make sure that that didn't happen. So she wrote a shtar matana. She wrote a contract that she's giving it to the daughter as a gift, but she told witnesses that she's only giving it because she wants to keep it away from her husband, and if the situation with her husband doesn't work out, then she wants the land that she's giving to her daughter. She wants everything returned to her. Anyway, it turns out that it didn't work out. She married the guy, she got divorced, and then she went to the daughter and said, "Give me back my stuff." And the daughter said, "No, you gave it to me as a gift." And so they went to Rav Nachman. And the daughter showed the shtar that she has a shtar matana that says everything belongs to her. And the lady apparently brought her eidim. The Gemara doesn't say it, but the lady apparently brought her eidim to show that it was a shtar havracha. Shtar havracha means that it was just to keep it away from the husband. So Rav Nachman tore up the shtar, meaning he said that it doesn't count as a gift. The gift isn't valid. So Gemara says Rav Hanan was upset about this. They came to Mar Okva. Mar Okva was the dayan in the town, and he said, "Look, Mr. Nachman is a farmer, and he's busy tearing up people's contracts. How is this allowed to continue?" So Mar Okva said, "Tell me exactly the story, exactly what happened." And he told him the story, and he said, "Aha, it's a shtar mevrachas. It was just a shtar to keep the property away from the husband. That does not count. It's not a valid gift at all." And Reb Chanilai said in the name of Reb Chanilai Bar Idi said in the name of Shmuel, "I am the officially appointed Paisik, appointed by the Reish Galusa, and I'm telling you that if a shtar mavrachas, a contract of a gift to keep it away from someone else, would come to me, I would tear it up. It's not a valid gift." And the reason apparently is because the person never really intended to give it as a gift. He just intended to keep it away from the other person. In this case, the lady intended to keep it away from her future husband. Now, the Gemara has 3 questions. First of all, Rav asked Rav Nachman, how could you learn from Shmuel? Shmuel is talking about a case where where the gift was given to someone else, to a stranger. So over there, it's logical to say that you didn't really want to give the gift to the stranger. You wanted to just keep it away from somebody. And therefore, it's not a valid gift. You never really had Gemara said das to give it. However, in this case, it was a mother giving it to a daughter. That's much more likely that she did intend to give it. So Gemara says, no, even so, she preferred to keep it for herself. So the understanding clearly was that if it's not going to work out the marriage, she's going to want it back. So, and therefore, the gift is not complete. Then the Gemara's second question is that we have a brayso that seems to say that you can't just write a regular shtar and make it to keep away from someone, therefore it's not valid. You have to write something in the shtar. The brayso brings 2 opinions what to write. The brayso says that Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says you write a shtar pasim, which is a shtar piyusim, where you're writing to the person that you're giving the gift to that he should accept it just as a hoax, temporarily perhaps, just in order to keep it away from somebody else who would be Yerush, but you don't actually want him to keep it. You have to write that in the shtar. That's what Shimon ben Gamliel. The Chachamim say it's not going to work. He's still going to get to keep it in that case. The only way to keep it away from him is if she writes that I'm giving this gift to be chal from now when at some point I want. Meaning the gift is not chal now. When at some point I want, the gift will become belonging to you. So that way, she wants to keep it away from her husband, she could say that I want the gift to be chal goes to someone else. But then when she wants to take it away from that someone else, she could say I don't want the gift to exist, and therefore it never really existed. It's the only way to avoid getting the property taken either by the husband or by the person who's receiving the gift. So there, the Gemara's kasha here, therefore, is that you see you have to write something in the shtar to show that it's not a real shtar. It's not enough to just say. So the Gemara says, no, it's different. In the case where she's writing away part of her property, there you have to write it, because it's possible that a person would really write away part of her property to someone else. But here she wrote away all her property. She definitely didn't give it all to someone else. She didn't want to be left with nothing. It was clearly only in order to keep it away from her husband, and therefore that's okay. And the Gemara's third kasha and that if Shmuel holds that the gift is invalid because she never really meant to give it over, so then the gift isn't valid. If the gift isn't valid, so then it still belongs to the lady at the time she gets married, and then therefore it should become the property of her husband. It should become the nechsim mulug of her husband, and he should be allowed to eat the fruits of it. So how could you tell me that the gift is invalid? What does it help then? Samar says the gift is not valid, but it still helps because we saw halacha earlier that any property that the husband does not know that the wife owns, he doesn't get. He doesn't get to eat the nechsim melog. He doesn't get to eat the peros from that. So here, because she wrote a shtar matana, it's considered as if the husband does not know about it, and that's why it's not chal, doesn't become his, at least for the peros involved. And now we get to the first Mishnah. The Mishnah discusses the concept of nichsei melug, which is the halacha that when a woman has property, she gets married, so that property belongs to her, but the husband has usage of it. He gets the fruits of it. So the Gemara wants to know, how do you define fruits and how do you define what's hers? So the Mishnah shows us there's a machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says the definition of fruits of something is that which grew, which was produced in his possession. That means when the husband marries her, he takes no possession of anything that exists at that time. That all belongs to her. Anything which is generated by that after the marriage, that's his. That's called fruits. Now the Chachamim say, no, fruits are anything which you can take them off and the essence of the property is still there. So fruits of a tree, even if they grew before the marriage, because you could take the fruits off and the trees are still left behind, that's called fruits. Now, everybody agrees, of course, that anything which doesn't produce fruits is her property, it belongs to her. And the question is going to be, how do you figure out how to give the fruits of those things to the husband if it doesn't grow fruits? But that's the property itself. So the Gemara is going to, so the Mishnah describes this halacha for us. So the Mishnah says, let's say she has cash. She has coins. So that's hers. It's definitely hers. It belongs to her. That's the goof of the thing. How do you make fruits from coins? So you buy land and it grows. Whatever grows on the land belongs to the husband. That's called the fruits of the coins. You turn it into something that produces. You buy. Now, what about fruits? Let's say she owned fruits that were detached from the ground. So that's like cash. Fruits don't produce fruits, and therefore belongs to her. That is the goof of the thing she owns, is the fruits. If you want to calculate the fruits of that, you have to take those fruits, sell them, buy land, and whatever's produced from that goes to the husband. Now here comes the machlokas, and that's in the case of where you have a field that is full of fruit at the time of the marriage. It's already grown. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, since it grew in the possession, since it grew in the rishus of the woman, it did not grow in the rishus of the husband. Therefore, it is not considered to be the husband's. The husband does not own those things as his own. It's not fruits that he owns. It's fruits that she owns. It's her property. It's nechsei melug. It's just like the detached and the coins. So therefore, those fruits belong to her, and he gets the value, the production, the fruits of those fruits. How do you calculate that? So you have to figure out how much those fruits are worth. You make a calculation. You calculate that, Reb Meir says, by subtracting the value of an empty field from the value of a full field. That difference is how much the fruits are worth. The husband then gives that money to the wife. That's him buying the fruits from her. He then takes possession of the field as nechsei melug. That money is now her money. That's in exchange for her fruits, which belong to her. And that is also going to be nechsei melug, which means he's going to get the usage of that. So you have to buy land with it, and then he'll be able to use the fruits that are grown from that land. This is all Rabbi Meir's opinion, who holds that the fruit themselves are the woman's property. They're not considered piros of the land, which is her property. Now the Chachamim disagree. The Chachamim say in this case, the fruits are considered to be the piros. They are the fruit of the land. Her property, in this case, is just the land, and these are considered fruits, even though they grew before the marriage, because you could take them off and the main possession is still there. The property, the trees are still there. Therefore, it's considered fruit, and the husband just takes this fruit and that's it. There aren't any issues. They're his. Now, Shimon has a different way of phrasing this. Gemara is going to ask that it's the same as the Chachamim. Shimon says, where he has power in the beginning of the marriage, he has no power in the end, and where he has no power in the end of the marriage, he has power in the beginning. How so? So he spells it out as follows: fruits which is attached to the ground, it's still growing. So when the marriage begins, they belong to him. It's considered to be fruits of the trees. The trees are her possession. The fruits are his. Like the Shita of the Chachamim, the Tanakh, which we saw, that's considered to be fruit because it's not the main thing. You can take it off and the trees are still left behind. Therefore, those are his. Now, when the marriage ends and she's taking it back, so if the trees are full of fruits at the time that the divorce is chal and she takes it back, so same thing. It's considered to be um, the fruits of it, and now belongs to her, so she gets to take it back. So she takes the fruits. Now, fruits which is detached from the tree, so it's the other way around. When the marriage begins, that belongs to her because that's the property that she got. On the other hand, when the marriage, that's the property that she brought in, and that's hers. He gets the fruits of those fruit, but not the fruits themselves. When the marriage ends, she leaves, then that fruit stays behind. That's considered to be the fruit which grew from the field before. That's his. He gets to keep those fruits. He doesn't have to give it to her. This is the Mishnah. Now let's start the Gemara. We now begin the Gemara. The Gemara's first topic is in a case where they have to sell the property in order to buy something, in order that it should be able to produce fruits that the husband could use. What should they buy? What happens if there's an argument between the man and the woman what to buy? She wants something that's going to last long, so that she'll have something left. It won't be used up when she gets it back at the end of the marriage. And he wants something that produces a lot of fruit. So what should he do? So the Gemara says, if they're arguing whether to buy land for farming or houses, so whoever wants the land could force the land because that has both miles. It produces more fruits, so the husband can insist on that, and it also lasts longer, so the wife can insist on that. It has what they're both looking for. Now, if the discussion is if they should buy houses or trees, specifically the date trees should buy houses. Houses are going to make more money and they last longer than trees. So therefore, they should each agree on that. Now, if it's between the date trees and other types of trees, you should buy the date trees. They last longer. They produce more fruit. And if it's between other types of trees and grapevines, you should buy other types of trees and not grapevines. So here's the rules of the things which produce more fruit and last longer. All right. Now the Gemara discusses, sometimes it's hard to pin down what exactly is the principle and what is the fruit. So the Gemara says, what if you have a forest that's used for chopping trees? So is the trees the principle or is the trees the fruit? Is it the fruit of the land because this land is used for firewood, or is it the principle? Also, what if you have a watering hole that's filled with fish? So is the fish the fruit or is the fish the item itself? Is the fish the keren itself, the principle itself? So the Gemara says it's a machlokas. So those who say that in these two cases, the forest, the trees are the actual keren, and you have to therefore sell them and buy something else that produces fruit because these don't produce fruit. And the same goes for the fish in the watering hole. Now those who say, no, these are the fruits, and they go to the husband, and the keren is the land on which the trees grow and the hole in which the fish swim. Now the Gemara ends off by saying that generally the principle is as follows. Anything which gets used up is fruits. Anything which stays and produces other things that get used up, that's the keren, that's not considered to be the fruits. Gemara now quotes the halacha of living creatures and their children. So the Gemara says that Rav Zera says name Rav Yoshi and name Rav Yanai, and some say it's Rav Abin and Rav Yoshi and name Rav Yanai. What's the halacha of the children of an animal and children of a shivcha? So he says if somebody steals the children of a animal which was nechsei malug, has to pay back twice the price. That's always the halacha. He has to give it back to the woman. That means that the woman is the one who owns the children, which means we're viewing the children as the keren themselves, not as the fruits. It says, who does this fit like? It doesn't fit like anybody. We have machlokes between the Rabbana and Hanania as to what the halachos are in the living creatures and their descendants, and nobody seems to hold that in an animal the children themselves are considered to be fruits. Where's this machlokes? Markot Brisa. Machlokes between the Rabbanan and Hanania. So Hanania Ben Achi Yeshai, he says as follows: the children of a behema and the children of a shivcha, they are all considered to be fruits. And the reason that they are fruits is because the mother is still alive and she survives. We're not concerned that she's going to die, and therefore she's not considered to be permanent. Okay, she's not going to die, and therefore the children that are born are fruits. They belong to the husband, and the mothers belong to the wife as nechsei malog. Now, that is the opinion of Hanani. The Rabbanan disagree. The Rabbanan say we are concerned that the mother is going to die, and therefore the mother themselves are considered to be fruits, and we do not consider the children to be fruits. However, that's not only true by a shifcha, where she may die and then you don't get anything out of her. In the case of the animal, the Gemara explains, even if the animal will die, you still can use the skin of the animal. Even though it's in a vela, it's still useful, and therefore there's some part of it that's going to stay forever. And therefore that's permanent, so that's Karen, and therefore the children are considered to be fruits. But either way, everybody agrees that the children are fruits, and the children of Behema are fruits. So how come over here we're quoting Rabbi Yishaya here, who says that they belong to the woman, which means that they are Karen and they are not fruits? So Gemara answers, this is different, because here we're talking about the kefel, the tashlumin that's paid for when they're stolen. That's not the animal themselves. That's the fruits of the animal. So even if you consider the animal to be fruits, which we do, the kefil that's generated by that is fruits of the fruits. That's pera de peri. That doesn't go to the husband. The fruits of the fruits go back to the original owner of the Karen, and therefore he doesn't get to keep them. And that's Pshat halacha over here. Now the Gemara says, what's the halacha altogether? Machlekes min Chanani and the Chachamim about the shevcha. So the Gemara says that Rav Huna bar Achia said name of Shmuel, the halacha is like Hananya. Rava said name Rav Nachman, that even though Shmuel said the halacha is like Hananya, he agrees that when they get divorced, she's allowed to buy back the animals, buy back the children, and take them to her father's house because they're part of her father's estate. There's a certain chashivas to them, the descendants of her father's house. She's allowed to buy them back and force that sale to happen. Next, the Gemara discusses what happens if you have a situation where there is clearly fruit, but the Karen, the main thing, is going to get worn out and it disappear. How does that work? So Gemara quotes Rava, name of Rav Nachman, who says in such a situation, as long as there's some little tiny bit left over, it still counts as the Karen. That thing that's left over is the Karen, and everything else that's involved is fruits. So some examples are, if she brings into the marriage a goat, which you want to use for milk, you can keep taking the milk, and as long as the goat is alive, and once he dies, so the Karen is gone, but at least you have something left over. Sheep for her wool, a chicken for the eggs, a tree for the fruits, all these things he gets to keep the fruit. As long as there's some tiny bit left over, that tiny bit left over is called the Karen, and everything else is all called fruits, and that belongs to the husband. Says Rav Nachman, if she brought into the marriage a shirt, so then he can he's allowed to wear the shirt, even though the shirt itself is the Karen. The wearing of it is considered fruit. It's the usage of it, and therefore he can keep using it until it's completely shredded and it's not wearable anymore. And those shreds, those rags, that's the Karen. That's what stays behind, and that's what she has left. Now, this all fits with the following Tana. The Tana says that salt, if you have a space near the ocean where salt is formed because the water splashes in there and dries out and leaves the salt behind, or if you have a space where you could dig out sand, so the salt and the sand are the fruits, and the hole that's left behind, which keeps producing more salt and sand, that's all Karen, but everything that keeps being produced is all fruit. Now, what if you have a hole where you can mine out lime or another type of salt, a type of mineral that's used as a coloring agent? Those things are used up. So here you have a machlekes. So Meir says that's called Karen because there's not going to be anything left behind, and therefore if you would use it all up, there's nothing left behind. It can't be called fruits of anything. It itself is like you got fruits fully grown, so it's a Karen because it's not producing anything else. And the Chachamim say, no, it's fruit because you still have the land that's left behind afterwards. Now we're going to analyze the last line of the Mishnah where we brought it Rav Shimon's opinion. Then we're asked if Rav Shimon is the same as Tanakama. He also holds that as long as it doesn't get used up, it's considered to be Karen. So what's he adding? The Gemara says, no, he's adding the last halacha that when she leaves the marriage, when the marriage ends, that the fruits which are considered to be attached those belong to her. Now we get to our next Mishnah, which discusses what happens if she brings something into the marriage which is going to get used up. It's not going to last, and he wants to sell it to buy something else. So the Gemara says she has a right to prevent that. So let's say she brings in very old avadim or shvachos, and he says these aren't going to function too long. I want to sell them and buy land so that I can get fruits at it for a while. She could say, no, this is my father's property. This is my household. This is my estate, and it has sentimental value to me. You can't force me to sell it. So the same thing is true about trees. So olive trees or grapevines, if they're old and not functional, he wants to buy new ones. Then so Rosh ben Gamliel says that he could force her, and Yehuda says that he cannot force her. She could say, "I want to keep them." So again, to clarify, in both cases, the avadim and the fruits, the Tanakama's opinion is that he can force her to sell it, and there's someone who argues. In the first case, Shimon Gamliel who argues. In the second case, Yehuda argues and says that she could say it's sentimental value to me. I'm not selling them. Now we have a brief comment in the Gemara limiting the case of this Mishnah, and then the Gemara is going to have to revise it. So Rav Kana says this whole machlokes as to whether or not he's allowed to sell it is only referring to a situation where the field is hers. She owns the field. And the question is to sell the trees. And the reason is because since she owns the field, the trees are considered fruits. The trees are something that's replaceable in the field. And therefore, they could argue about that. However, if she didn't own the field, she just owned trees without any field. So that's Karen. That is if you're going to get rid of that, that's Karen, and he doesn't have a right to sell Karen. He only has fruits. So Gemara's question on this is that we see that avadim and shvachos we're discussing if you're allowed to sell. Avadim and shvachos aren't fruits of anything; they themselves are Karen for sure. So that can't be correct. So Gemara therefore revises it, and then Gemara says, no, really, we're talking about selling the Karen, and you're allowed to sell the Karen. That's this whole discussion is can he force her to sell the Karen or not. However, if she owns the field, so he can't make her sell her field. That's that's certainly considered to be part of her father's house and has significant value, and therefore that for sure there's no argument. Just the trees, that's something which we can discuss. Now we'll just do the last Mishnah, and this is if the husband invested in the Karen, in the trees, or whatever it is. He has no right to get anything back unless he didn't get any return at all. So if he invested a lot, he got back a little, invested a little, got back a lot. Either way, he can't claim any return on his investment. Whatever fruits he got, and that's it. Once the marriage ends, she gets back the Karen. However, if he invested and he did not get anything out of it, then he has a right to demand his investment return. He has to swear how much he spent, and he can get it back at the end of the marriage.